The next is K, the election process. The Electoral Trust will publish the schedule of when the election will take place and the conduct of the election. What they can do is they can hold very interesting elections. My suggestion, and we'll let them choose. You don't want to nail this down, but here's what's possible. They can decide that they can have an election over a 7-day period, 24 hours a day over 7 days, and that the people can vote by internet, on your computer, by telephone, by snail mail, going to the library, by kiosk. They can make voting so easy rather than the silliness of having to go out on a rainy Tuesday once a year. It's just so ridiculous. Trust me, my experience has taught me, with being involved in politics since I was 15 years old, that representative government designs to make it difficult for people to participate in representative government. They don't make it easy, and there's a reason for that, because they don't want you to participate. They want to exercise power that they hold, and they don't want you to participate. Trust me on that one. So that's the election process. It will be made so convenient to the process. And here too, if they decide that they will be at the federal level, one federal election, and we can look at the way it's operated in Switzerland. They probably have 4 federal issues a year. Trust me, by the time the people get used to this process, it'll be difficult to get 4 federal decisions out of the people a year. Make a list of all of the federal issues that you think that the people should vote on. You'll have a tough time getting above 20. And so after a year or so, you'll have a tough time getting to 52 issues a year, which means that that would be one federal issue a week, and that would be probably the first year. Once you get over it and the people get used to this, you won't be seeing the people putting forth the same old issues. People will decide these issues pretty definitively. But you'll have the opportunity, if it's one issue per jurisdiction a week, that means that you could have one federal issue, one state issue, and one local issue, so you could, at max, you could have 4 issues a week that you'd be voting on. And that's the max that I would foresee based upon my observations of what issues have been percolating to the top of initiative states and in initiatives around the world, places in Germany that have experiences just like in the United States at the state level, and in Switzerland. L, the enactment. This is a repeat of what was in the amendment, the Constitution, the Democracy Amendment. Several of the points are repetitions, but it's important that it be in the amendment. And let me make one point here. Most of the details of the statute should not be in the Constitution. It clutters up the Constitution, but certain elements must be in the Constitution because they're that fundamental. And the enactment is fundamental, and that's why it appears both in the Constitutional Amendment and in the Act. And let me repeat it again, and that is, when you're amending the Constitution in the enactment, which is Section L, and that is that it takes 2 elections, 2 votes to amend the Constitution, 2 majority votes, 6 months apart, no longer than a year apart. And if you pass it in the first, if you fail in the first one, the amendment's dead. If you pass it in the first vote, then you have to have another vote, 6 months, or at least no longer than a year. And if that passes, then the amendment is passed. If it doesn't pass to the second one, the amendment fails. However, when you're enacting a statute, you need just a simple majority of the voter turnout. The other needed a majority of the registered voters. You begin to see the difference. So if you're talking about a constituency of, let's say, 100,000 voters, all you need for an amendment to the Constitution is you need more than 50,000 voters to pass the amendment. However, if you're enacting a statute, you could get the majority of 30,000 that turn out and you could pass a statute. It's a very critical difference because it's very important to have it very difficult to amend a constitution since it's such fundamental law. The next is M, the effective date. All laws have to have an effective date. And so if it's not in the law itself, we provide that the effective date is 45 days after the initiative is enacted into law. The judicial review. This is very critical and must be understood. Laws enacted by the people, just like laws enacted by the Congress or any other body, are subject to judicial review. Now, laws that are in the process of being enacted are not subject to judicial review except if there's a fraud being committed. Now, that's not the case with right now with the 24 states that have initiative laws. And that's exactly how representative government does sabotage a lot of initiatives put forth by the people. They really sabotage them through the judiciary invading the legislative process of the people. Well, they can't do that when the legislature acts, but they do that when the people enact laws. Well, they can't do that under this process. When the people enact laws, they're entitled to enact the law, and if it's unconstitutional, well, the courts can declare them unconstitutional. But you can't do that in the process of the people enacting the law, which they do now with state laws. The courts have no power to invade a constitutional amendment because it's a constitutional amendment. Now, here too, they cannot, there's nothing to adjudicate. If there's an amendment, they can interpret what the amendment says, but they cannot declare it they cannot void a constitutional amendment. They can determine what it says. I hope that's clear. The O is promotional communications. Anybody who is trying to promote information about an initiative or against an initiative must be identified, and the communication and the procedures to identify the person in question will be determined by the electoral trust. This is very, very important. And as you know, like in a presidential election, people watch, an ad is put up and Obama or McCain, this is approved, and I approve this ad. Well, that's a way of identifying the communication. Well, the electoral trust will define how that identification is done. And it's done one way for newspapers, it's done one way for television, it's done one way for radio. And here again, when you get into sophisticated technology, there will be different ways that it will need to be done. And that's where the electoral trust needs to have a little bit of slack to be able to determine how this is to be done. But we need to have identification of all of these communications so the people will know who's opposing and who is for these and the nature of these communications.